Kelvin.
David. You don't do that.
I'm easily forgettable.
Next up, invocation. I'd like to ask David to lead us here in a quick prayer.
Heavenly Father, we thank you for a very productive evening with all the committees that have been up before you. We ask that you grant the grace to make this committee be just as effective, if not more. We ask this all in the name of your Son, Jesus. Amen.
First up, we've got the approval of the agenda. I apologize, I'm new to Robert's Rules of Order, so if I mess this up, feel free to jump in and correct me.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Next, we've got recognition of the public. Is anyone here from the public that wishes to speak or be noted? Well, thank you, obviously, everybody, for sticking around. This is not as exciting as the last meeting. It looked like the last meeting was about 150 pages thick. This one's 1 page, so thanks for sticking around. Next up, approval of the minutes from July 18th, 2022.
I make a motion to approve.
And this is a motion to approve as to form.
Oh, this is the form, correct.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Report of the committee chairman. I believe that's me. No formal report. Just again, I'd like to thank everybody for being here. Maybe give a quick 30-second remark about my vision for this meeting, or not for just for this meeting, but for this committee. I think historically it's met maybe once a quarter. I think that's probably a really good cadence. I would put the next meeting, beginning of December, which getting around the holidays, so it's going to be a little tough. But I think with all the new commission members that are coming, there's going to be a lot of questions. They're going to be getting a lot of reporting, a lot of information. And I find it's good when you get a bunch of new people to really flush out the information they need, how they want to get it, and get things right at the beginning, so that there's not a lot of people struggling. So I don't know if there's any sort of tutorials, one-on-ones that we have now, but I would like to use this committee to help upgrade any of the reporting that's necessary, and really just help the new commission do their job as effectively as possible. So, next up, report from the county mayor.
I saved everything till after 9 o'clock, so I've got
Appreciate
a
it.
lengthy report. No, I'm just kidding. No report.
Report
I
Ben.
just got to.
No report.
Report of the trustee.
She's not here, so
She's
she
not
just
here.
puts in the packet. This is the vestments.
Okay. I think in the back here, there's some information on our upcoming debt obligations and when they roll off. I'd asked our finance director here to walk us through that. I come from the corporate world, the for-profit world. Obviously, the name of the game there is to maximize profit. We're in the public sector. The name of the game is to not default on our debts and make sure we've got enough money to pay everybody and everything. So a good understanding of money leaving the door and obligations like debt are very important, especially since they come first in line above anything else. So with that, maybe you can,
Do my report?
yeah, that'd be great.
Item A is just GASB A7, which GASB stands for Governmental Accounting Standards Board. This year, the board that's in charge of county's financial reporting for state and local governments has decided that most leases are now reportable in some form or fashion, where they never were before. The problem it creates for county governments for our funds which are budgeted, if it is a new lease, it creates a revenue source and a revenue use, which is a budgetary impact, even though it's really just a financial accounting mechanism. So what I'm recommending is we actually send this back to the it says budget committee or commission. It should say that. It should actually say the subcommittee for policy subcommittee. And that's just my report, that's what I plan to do, send it back to policy subcommittee. Item B, which is not on there, but something maybe everybody would be interested. One thing we are still in is the process of completely implementing the 2012 Act and removing the county to a complete ERP system. Our estimates right now, by January 1st, 2022, we will be on a new payroll system for the county, and it will actually be attached directly to our ERP system, which doesn't exist right now. Another one is something that's discussed with our implementation is timekeeping, and that was a question back in budget. We are using the Kronos timekeeping. We have probably about 60 to 80% of the employees on Kronos right now. As soon as we're done with the implementation of payroll in January, we are planning to start implementing the rest of the Kronos system, which we hope to have done in somewhere around 6 months. If you read through the 2012 Act, the other sections that's never been addressed is the Highway Department, but that would still be a while out, and as far as any POs or timekeeping for them, which is something that's been discussed at the committee several times, but is not particularly on your implementation plan at this point, until at least the plus out. Be something to actually discuss with the new road superintendent too. And that is the end of my report.
So do we need to make a motion to do this in the new list of the policy subcommittee? I don't know if we have. to have
No,
one.
me, the county mayor, the road superintendent, a member of the Elected Officials Association, and I think the chairman of financial management are actually on that
Okay.
committee.
Got it.
So after this, I plan to send them an email, we'll call the committee, have a meeting on that, and it'll come back to this committee to adopt. Just making you aware that is on the radar. Probably several other policies we will need to start looking at in pretty quick, short order as far as our debt policies and other ones that need to be updated pretty soon. But that's the end of my report.
As far as the upgrades that are being made to the ERP system, everything's currently in compliance, right? This is just a.
Oh, yeah, we're going from
Improved.
1992 to
Okay.
16. We're following federal, state laws. We're actually putting in more reporting and more tracking.
Okay.
We're attaching it directly to our enterprise system right now. What we've got is an old system. We export the payroll out and import it into the enterprise system, so we're eliminating that. And that was just an interim step where we're trying to change all the software, because we made a change on all the GL and everything a couple years ago.
John, does this align with, I know you ran on a lot of new upgrades to the reporting, more transparency, more visibility.
Yeah.
Does this align with your vision for running the county going forward?
Oh,
Or are there
absolutely.
Changes that need to be
Yeah,
made to
yeah,
implement what
we,
you're looking for?
yeah, I think the subcommittee will start looking at this as opportunities to make changes, make everything more transparent as possible, and still stay within the GASB guidelines. So yeah.
Awesome, yeah, like I said, I want to make sure everybody's got the tools they need, and a big part of, I think, managing is just having people using the systems to change management, but also the leadership at top that's going to support it. If you're not supportive of the ERP systems, they tend to fail at the top from what I've seen, so appreciate your support here and pushing it down as quickly as possible. Great, we move on to new business then?
Can we talk about the debt schedule?
Yeah. Please do.
That's the first one. It's on page, well, your last page is you actually have your debt schedule for the county amortization schedule, and there's a couple important for the last, should be the last 2 pages. And the last page is actually the consolidated debt schedule, which would be the most important. It shows your principal and interest together. What this schedule does is it shows by each different issuance we have, including refinancing. It shows on page 1 your interest and principal and total by fiscal year. On page 2, that actually shows those added together. There's been a lot of question about the county's debt, but if you look at 2 things that are total principal and interest, or actually this year's about $36.6 million. If you look next year, it's $31.1 million, and the following year's $21.4 a year. So next year you have about $5 million less debt payments, and the following year about $10 million less than that for several
Well,
years.
it's part of that because we moved a couple pennies out of debt service, is that correct?
No, last year they moved some pennies out of debt service to fund certain things and to, and temporary to do them. Some of them should come back. So when you move your pennies that were anticipated to be temporary, this fund should break even.
Okay.
So what should happen with that $5 million going down, you should have an excess in the debt service. So that will make possible future debts become callable. We'll have to go through those later, but you know, I'm with you on the call dates. You could call some of your debt and or use it to offset inflation or other things that you may need to do.
Got it.
So David, is each one of these columns a different bond?
Yes.
Okay.
It's a series of bonds. The bonds are issued in $5,000 increments a series. So that's an actual series that was issued, for instance, in 2021. And then I put beside them, because I thought that was something important, so they're actually completely off, is it actually even shows, like the 2011, it shows it there, but if you look, there's a minus right beside it. That's because that particular issuance was refinanced, so it has a negative effect, but it's still, if you go and pull it on MSRB, it'll still show up. It'll show it's refunded, but you can still find it.
So the way to understand this then is, if I want to understand principal and interest, I would add these two.
You just have to go to the next page, it does it.
Oh.
Yeah. That's where you show
You
your
said
interest.
that.
That's why I said
I'm
if you look
sorry.
at your first year, it's
I'm sorry.
36.6. And
Gotcha.
you go down to 30.1
I'm
and
tracking.
21, so you're dropping 5 million and 10 million off. So what that means, if you don't
Tracking.
issue, and if you look at your principal, if you don't issue any new debt, this year you're gonna lose about 25.6 million of debt, next year 21.1, and next year 12.7. So at this point, if you had no new debt issuance for a couple of years, you're gonna lose a significant portion of your debt over the next couple of years.
Thanks. Sorry for the dumb
No,
question.
no, there's never a dumb question.
Oh, that was one.
Based on current revenues and expenditures, do you project the need to add more debt this year?
No, right now, what we understand, the only thing that we know of on the immediate horizon that could possibly be a debt issuance, which has been discussed, is the old courthouse. The thing you're gonna run into, the two issues, and I'm not involved in some of the portions, there's been the discussion of its historical value, but if you look at it on the financial perspective, it will be the most expensive square foot that you'll ever have to actually fix. So the question is it something that you want to issue debt and repair, is kind of the issue of the commissioner, is it something you want to lease out or some other format with the requirement to keep the historical value? That'd be a question for the commission.
Is it appropriate to bring that, to make a motion to bring that up in this committee, or is that for budget, or is that for legislative?
What happens with the building? That would
Right.
probably start somewhere around looking at its needs and stuff in gen, if I was guessing, gen ops.
Okay.
Because they determine buildings' needs and usages. Kind of a discussion tonight about the maintenance facility. Probably the best place for it would have been starting originally
Gen
over in
ops,
gen
which
ops
is
and move
why
up.
we-
That way they can discuss square footage and requirements, and then it kind of goes up. And what you're probably going to discover is that building with their other buildings, probably not a complete need for the cost is what you're going to run into.
We'll talk about all of that a little closer once the Justice Center is finished and we get them all moved out. We've got some opportunities
Okay.
that we want to discuss, but yeah, us renovating that's gonna be quite pricey.
So if you don't renovate that, say just that you don't renovate that, and for instance, just hypothetically lease it out to somebody that has to keep the historical and maybe put whatever in there.
Yeah.
Then this is what your debt schedule would look like. Most of our bonds have I believe it's a 12-year call, I'll have to look, but some people were discussing about the potential of paying off your debt early. Right now, we do not have any of the bonds that are callable, but as I emailed one of the commissioners today, I will add into the schedule all your call dates. It'll make it much easier for you guys to look at it. So you'll
Yeah,
see
because we can't pay any of this off early.
No, you can call them when the call date is here. You could put back cash to pay them off later, but you've got to think of a couple of things though. These bonds, the earnings on them are tax exempt. So when we issue a bond and we're holding any proceeds for them, the interest earnings, we got to be really careful, because if we earn excess earnings past the de minimis amount, don't meet very stringent spend downs, which are very hard to meet, not without being wasteful, then you potentially have to rebate that to the IRS. One of the requirements is for some of your arbitrage, which don't mean you'll necessarily have to rebate, but it makes it harder not to, is in your debt service, you should not have more than 13 months of interest and principal. So would not be a good idea with you having, say, payments of, what's our total next year? $31 million if you had more than $33 million worth of cash in there. How you overcome that is you can move your tax levy allowance. So say, for instance, you decided you did want to call a bunch of bonds 6 years out, but you'd have excess cash in your debt service. What you could do is put excessive amounts in your general fund, and then the year you want to pay off, you would move tons of the general fund's levy over to the debt service. The general fund would run on a deficit that year and drain that revenue back out, but you'd move it back up to your debt service. So yeah, I think having a plan, if you wanted to get rid of debt, it's a good thing, but doing anything early, it wouldn't be wise to take it and invest in investments earning less and set out there to call.
With inflation, probably.
You're gonna have to be, I'm not saying paying it off when it's called is not a bad thing. a lot of counties will call debt when rates change to issue cheaper debt, which is not
That ain't gonna happen, right?
right. Not gonna happen, but you may have the opportunity where if you had $10 million and you wanted to save some money, you find and they become callable, you find your series that had the highest interest rate.
Yeah,
You
that's
call
right.
that series.
Yeah.
You call that series of bonds, and I would look for the one with the highest, and we call
But these
it.
are pretty low interest bonds, aren't
The
they?
recent ones are 1.6, 1.5.
Right, some of the most recent ones, probably the lowest one we've
But,
seen.
but you're gonna have to look at your series, because each series has different rates, so based on what the appetite was, generally you expect the longer term to be high. Most of the time, sometimes you'll find these high series in the middle where they were sold at a significant premium, and you could grab those on a call, if you had the cash.
Got it.
So that's a potential savings you could look at.
The problem is all the schools we have to build.
Different discussion.
Is any of our debt callable early by the
Right now.
lending?
No, you mean not callable, but, what's the word?
Accelerated?
Yeah, they can call them, no, there's none, so.
Okay.
As long as we're following,
Yes.
as long as we're paying them and doing reporting to MSRB and, what's that called, we haven't done that way, we have no variable debt.
Okay.
It's all fixed and GO/school bonds and fixed rate. I believe it's what we recall, but I hate to tell you wrong, we'll go back and look at them off the top of my head. It's whatever the market got us the best rates, what we can do for the cost. The second one is one talking to Mr. Zimmerman, which we had the same discussion with Matt. A lot of these agendas get out really late, like your agenda got out too late. The reason we've had a deadline the Wednesday before the meeting, I think Matt wanted to see his like a week earlier. If you want to move the deadline to get your agenda earlier, then we probably need to move back the deadline for when they have to finance, so we can prepare the agenda. So that's just on here for the committee's discussion. Because what happens, we'll get things up to Wednesday sometimes at noon, and if there's any issues with them, we won't have to do Thursday morning.
Yeah. How long?
Holiday Friday.
How many days is a good amount? A week and a half in advance?
Budget, they said a week in advance, but their agenda is usually significantly larger.
Okay.
I would say if you could get it, what is that, meeting the Monday, if you could actually receive it. If I was a commissioner, financial manager, I'd probably like to receive it the Wednesday before the meeting.
Okay.
Now, budget, I'd want to receive the Monday before, kind of like what Matt was talking about, because it's got a lot more parts.
So that's, yeah.
But if you wanted to receive it the Wednesday before the meeting, then you probably need to have a deadline that Monday by noon,
Okay.
the previous Monday by noon, if that's what the committee would like to see. Just from my thought process, that's probably just historically, it's not usually a big.
I'll make a motion for that schedule.
I'll second it.
I'm assuming no discussion, but, all right, call to a vote then? All right, all in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye. All against? All right. Make sure to get that out by Wednesday. That's obviously on me, so I'll connect with you at least by the Monday before the next meeting.
We'll send them an email and tell everybody that on the next one, the new deadline will be the Monday before the meeting, and we'll get them off to you guys on Wednesday. The next one's reporting, that's one that Mr. Zimmerman wanted on there to talk about. As far as this committee, any reporting you'd like to see or anything you'd like us to form, just contact us and we'll try to see, we have a lot of data in the ERP system, we just gotta determine what you want and make it into an understandable format. I don't think you wanna see a row of 1,000 expenditures, but we can
Exactly.
use the system to make usable formats of about anything. If
Yeah. We've got a couple department heads here, we've got commissioners here. I didn't want to spend a ton of time figuring out what everybody needs for reporting. Just wanted to see if there's a general appetite for some good reporting to help manage your departments, manage the commission. And if maybe we could I don't want to form a subcommittee if we don't need to, but something around reporting to make sure that everybody's got what they need to manage the most effectively, so.
And we send several reports internally to departments, but you guys would send them like PO reports and expenditure reports and detailed reports. But we're speaking probably also like what would the committee like to see? Would you like to see some summarization? We put financials on the website, but we could put financials based on revenues, more details, less by department, location.
Projections.
Projections we've got, and that's something we'll deal with in budget because the new policy requires the 4 projections. We've had those developed or pretty close to build for quite a while. It's just to see if that's what the committee wants.
I've got, I mean, we've talked at length about projections and thoughts on the budget. I don't know that I have any good thoughts on this to advocate, but I know, Mr. Mayor, you've got some general thoughts on just reporting. Have you thought about anything on the debt side or debt breakouts? Or?
Well, we have the schedule, I mean, we can itemize that, and tell you what each item's for, but, I mean, the way the debt structure's set up, I think we're pretty solid on trying to reduce it. So I think we just stick with that policy.
Yeah.
Now, what our subcommittee would talk about is a debt policy that we need to look at, and we wanna make sure we align that with the state debt policy and all of that, but we'll talk about that a little bit more down the road.
We have a debt policy that may just need to be updated. That's what we're
Okay.
looking at.
That,
It's on the website.
all right.
It's just
So
there's a few
that'll
things
be
changing.
something that we'll
Is that for this
revisit.
committee? To,
It'd go through the subcommittee,
All
this
right.
committee. For instance, like these leases, there's some additional state reporting. We don't have those types of required reporting, but we probably need to add into our policy. It's more for if you're leasing vehicles or buildings, something of that nature. My perspective is I would highly discourage leasing vehicles
Yeah.
because there's more profit for the leaseor, and it's really not a good thing. It's better to buy those outright.
Yeah.
Very rare is it good to lease other thing other than maybe a building, and we're leasing one or two buildings right now because of construction.
yeah.
But we do need to add those to our policy, and then probably need to add something for the budgetary treatment of some of this stuff. But as far as being in compliance, we are in compliance with state and reporting, as far as that goes.
Probably not.
And the next one's future projects, and that's one that we were talking about, to see if there's any future projects that the committee would like for us to explore. Right now, we're in the implementations. I said the payroll's gonna be in the ERP by the end of January. We'll hopefully have the timekeeping progress in the next 6 months based on staffing that we're using toward it. And one of the long-term was that was the highway, but that's something that would first need to be discussed with the highway department. And since he's only had, less than a week, I don't think that's something he wants to discuss tonight. I think he's probably had other things to think about at this point. But as far as any kind of projects you would like us to look at undertaking or work with the committee, just, that's what's on here for.
Yeah, is that in-house projects that you're primarily talking
Yeah,
about?
if there's some project that you have concerns about. You were asking some about maybe vehicles, and we can get reported for the fixed assets for vehicles.
Right.
We can send you the outright fixed asset report. It's pretty easy, or maybe pull some other reporting. It's according to what you would like to see. If the committee tells us what they would like to see, or individual, we can produce a lot of stuff.
Yeah, I think we kind of, loaded cost of employees would be something that would be amazing to see.
That you'll see on your budget. When you do your budget,
Okay.
because like every line item in your budget, like if it says deputies, it'll have a deputy position, it'll have a full or a vacant position, and then it'll have the insurance, the retirement, everything in a total at the end. So your insurance is all have to total up to the insurance budget part of your retirement, so.
But you can divide and extrapolate.
Oh yeah, we'll show it to you on the screen, or your printouts if you want to, but here in the budget committee, historically, they went through each one of those and looked at them, maybe rather fast, but they have looked at those.
Okay.
And you can look at the total cost of, then that's another thing, there's actually an insurance committee that looks at the insurance, and then TCRS is actuarial. We can go through those benefits, and we can show you the details of anything like that. We've got a lot of reporting, and you guys haven't been through a cycle where we, like in the budget, you get a whole bunch of stuff on the screen, and for how long we spend on it.
Yeah, for instance, all of Toby's vehicles, I mean, I don't even know what we own as a county.
We got his fixed assets, he's got an inventory listing. Either one of them can supply you. Ours will be more on things that are capitalizable and large. Toby may have more detail down in the smaller items.
Yeah, because I imagine some of that stuff's old enough it's paid for.
A lot of it is.
Yeah.
That's something that they put a penny of property tax to buy new equipment. 2 years ago, but my understanding, there's still a significant amount of old equipment from Miss Harden, and I think I've heard the same thing from Toby, there's a lot of old equipment out there.
There's a lot of equipment, and of course, it's itemized down from the stapler on the desk all the way to the grader out on the job sites. And so that's one thing that I'm probably gonna do in the next few weeks, is I'm doing a new inventory report to match what the previous administration did, and then match up, and then I will make sure that John looks over, and he'll probably sign off on it and look at it as well, and I'll send it to David, and so.
Most of your stuff in pretty good shape, or have you gotten the chance to?
You know, we've got a few things from the Reagan administration, but,
It's older than me.
Yeah.
No, I was ready.
yeah, but I mean, we got, no doubt, we've got some good equipment, but we also are in need of some new equipment. We're looking at ways, I'm meeting with CTAS, Monday, to look at some different ways, for purchasing equipment, maybe a lease option to where we can stretch our dollars there.
Okay, future projects.
Anything else on future projects?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Oh, you can't second that.
I'll second it.
Call the vote?
Aye.
All in favor? Aye.
I don't think anyone should argue with that one at 9:30.
Against?
Oh, man.
Colin gets the award for the most efficient meeting. Sorry, Matt, you lose.
Oh, I lose bad.
No fault.
I might have the all-time worst.
She would have all current.